The alien children were small, with skin that shimmered like liquid silver and eyes that glowed faintly in soft colors. They lived on a huge space station far from Earth, where the stars stretched endlessly outside the tall, curved windows. The station was clean and shiny, with corridors that hummed quietly with machines, but it was not a home. At least not a human home. To the children it was all they had ever known. Even though they had never seen snow or heard carols, they had learned about Christmas from the human workers who sometimes spoke about it in passing. "Christmas is a time for giving," one human had said while fixing a broken panel in the hallway. "People hang stockings and someone fills them with small gifts while they sleep." The children had listened with wide eyes, fascinated by this idea. The thought of receiving gifts, even without fully understanding it, made their small hearts feel warm. One of the children, a girl named Lyra, bounced across the room carrying a tiny tube of shiny material. "We should hang the stockings," she chirped. Her voice was soft but musical, like the hum of the station's engines. She reached up to the wall and carefully attached the stocking with a piece of glowing adhesive. Other children followed her lead. They had made their stockings from leftover pieces of fabric, colored lights, and scraps of soft material they found around the station. Each one looked different. Some were neat and perfect, while others were messy and wild, but to the children, every stocking was beautiful. "I wonder if someone will fill them," Lyra said, tilting her head. Her eyes flickered with silver light. "Maybe," said her friend Jorik, whose skin pulsed gently like liquid metal. "The humans do this every year. They might see our stockings and leave something for us too." The children laughed, a sound like tiny bells ringing. They had no idea how a human would feel about their small tradition. They had never been given gifts before. The concept was strange and magical to them. But their curiosity made them hopeful. They finished hanging all the stockings in a neat row along the wall of their shared room. Each stocking had a little trinket tied to it, a small crystal, a shiny pebble, a piece of colored wire twisted into a shape. They even hung a tiny drawing they had made, hoping someone would notice it. Once the stockings were hung, the children sat together on the floor, staring at them. The lights of the station flickered gently, reflecting in their glowing eyes. "It's beautiful," said Lyra softly. "It feels like something good might happen." Jorik nodded. "I hope the human sees them. I hope someone cares." The children did not fully understand humans, but they sensed that humans had a special kind of kindness. It was not loud or obvious, but it was there in the way the humans worked quietly, in the way they smiled at each other, or sometimes bent down to speak gently to the children. The alien children did not know how humans thought or why they felt certain things, but they had learned to watch, and they had learned that humans sometimes did small, surprising things just to make others happy. As the station grew quiet, the children whispered about what might happen. They imagined a human walking down the hallway in the dark, stopping in their room and leaving gifts in the stockings. Maybe it would be something shiny like the little lights they had attached, or maybe it would be something strange and new from the humans' world. The children did not care what it was. Just the idea of someone giving something to them made their hearts feel full. They had never been part of any human holiday before. They did not know carols or songs, and they did not know the stories of Christmas. But in their small way they had created their own version of it. The shiny stockings, the trinkets, the hopeful whispers, all of it was their way of joining a world they did not fully understand. Night came and the station's corridors dimmed to a soft hum. The children lay down together, staring at the stockings in quiet excitement. They imagined the human janitor, a figure they had seen only from a distance, perhaps walking quietly through the station, noticing the stockings and feeling a small tug in his heart. Lyra sighed happily. "Maybe this is the start of something special," she said, her eyes flickering like silver stars. The other children nodded, sharing her hope. They did not know what would happen, but for the first time they felt part of a story bigger than themselves, a story of giving, kindness, and surprise. Outside, the stars spun silently, and the station drifted through space. Inside, the alien children clung to their small tradition, waiting, imagining, and hoping, unaware that someone was about to notice their tiny gesture and make it real. The human janitor moved quietly through the long, gleaming corridors of the space station. He was a small, wiry man, with a face weathered from years of work and eyes that had seen far too many lonely nights. Most of the station's crew barely noticed him. He was just part of the background hum, like the lights that never turned off or the machines that never slept. But he noticed everything. He noticed the children first in the corridors, chasing each other with shy curiosity, their silver skin shimmering under the station's lights. He noticed the way they lingered near human workers, listening to words they did not fully understand, trying to grasp the strange gestures and habits of people so different from themselves. and he noticed the stockings. At first he thought he had imagined it. A small row of tubes, patched together with scraps of colored fabric and shiny wires, hanging neatly along the wall of one of the children's rooms. They were too small for human hands, too delicate to be ignored. Something inside him stirred, a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. He knew Christmas. Not from stories but from memories. Memories of snow falling softly outside a small house on Earth, of lights twinkling in windows, of laughter echoing in cold air. Memories of a tradition that had been ordinary once, but now felt like a treasure from another life. The janitor paused in the doorway, listening to the soft whispers of the children inside. He could not understand their language fully, but the emotion was clear. Hope, excitement. A quiet, innocent longing for something they had never known. He smiled softly to himself. He had never given gifts to anyone, not really. His work kept him busy and most humans thought him too ordinary, too quiet, too invisible. But now, standing in front of these small, glowing creatures, he felt a sudden need to do something. To reach out. To be part of this strange, new tradition they had created without even knowing it. He left the room quietly and returned to the storage bays. The station was silent at this hour, except for the low hum of machinery and the faint echo of air moving through the vents. He moved slowly, carefully, choosing small items he thought the children would enjoy. A few bright lights from old control panels, shiny pebbles from the science lab, and some small human trinkets he had collected over the years. Each item was small, simple, but he handled them with care. He imagined the children's faces when they discovered the gifts. Would they be happy? Surprised? Would they even understand the meaning? It did not matter. What mattered was the act itself, the silent, small gesture that connected one being to another. The janitor worked carefully, making his way back to the children's room. He moved like a shadow, avoiding the main corridors and humming quietly to himself. He paused at the doorway, looking at the sleeping children for a moment. They were curled up together on the floor, their shimmering forms faintly glowing in the dim light. Their eyes were closed, but their tiny mouths hinted at smiles and dreams he could not understand. Gently he placed each item inside the stockings. The bright lights went in first, flickering softly as if they were alive. The pebbles followed, smooth and cool in the small tubes. Then came the trinkets, small, strange, human things that would make the children curious, even if they did not know their purpose. He paused for a moment after placing the last gift. Something inside him tightened, a feeling he could not name but understood completely. It was happiness, yes, but also awe. To witness hope so pure, so untouched by the world was rare. To be the one to nurture it even in the smallest way was a privilege. He stepped back, surveying his work. The stockings now bulged slightly with the surprises inside, each one a tiny treasure waiting to be discovered. He smiled to himself, satisfied. Quietly he whispered, "Merry Christmas," though the children would not hear him. It did not matter. The words were for himself, a connection to the world he had left behind and the new world he was learning to care for. The janitor left the room as silently as he had entered. In the corridors, the soft hum of the station seemed to echo his satisfaction, carrying it down the hallways and into the hearts of anyone who might notice. He returned to his own small quarters, humble and unassuming, but inside he felt something larger than himself. He had done something small, yes, but in that small act was the power to create wonder. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, indifferent yet beautiful. Inside, the children slept, unaware that someone had watched over their small tradition, unseen but caring. The janitor, who had long thought of himself as invisible, realized for the first time that he could make a difference, even quietly. As he lay down to rest, he imagined the children waking to find their stockings filled. He imagined their laughter, their curiosity, their wonder. And he felt a warmth that no machine, no metal wall, no endless corridor could ever take away. It was the warmth of connection, of kindness, of a simple human truth. Even in the farthest reaches of space, small acts of care could shine brighter than any star. And somewhere, deep in the room where the children slept, tiny hands twitched in their dreams, reaching for stockings they had hung with hope. Little did they know, someone had already answered that hope, quietly, gently, and completely human. The janitor had never felt like a hero. He had never been called one, and in the quiet hum of the space station he sometimes wondered if anyone even noticed him at all. Yet tonight something inside him had changed. The small, shimmering stockings of the alien children were no longer just pieces of fabric on a wall. They were a chance to bring a little wonder into a world that often felt cold and mechanical. He started in his quarters, gathering what he could. There were a few bright lights salvaged from old control panels, their bulbs flickering with a soft, comforting glow. He had some small pebbles from the science lab, smooth and strangely warm to the touch. And there were the trinkets he had kept over the years, tiny human toys, a small music box, and even a bit of colorful string that he thought might look pretty in the alien hands. He studied each item carefully, imagining how the children would react. Some of the gifts were shiny and fun, like toys a human child might enjoy. Others were just small, simple things like pebbles or bits of string, but he knew that curiosity often made ordinary objects magical in the hands of the young. In a way, he was preparing a lesson in imagination, wrapped in kindness. As he packed each item into a small container, he thought about the children themselves. They were unlike any humans, with skin that shifted in soft silver tones and eyes that glowed faintly in colors he had never seen before. They did not understand the stories of Christmas or the songs of Earth, but they understood hope. And that, he realized, was enough. The janitor moved carefully through the quiet station. Every step was measured. The corridors were dim, lined with smooth metal walls that reflected the faint hum of machinery. He imagined the children sleeping inside their room, dreaming of something they could not yet name. The stockings would not be a simple gift to them. They would be a mystery, a small wonder that might spark joy in a place that was often too strange, too mechanical, too far from home. He paused outside the room, looking through the small window. The children were indeed asleep, huddled together on the soft floor mats they had made. Their breathing was calm, their small bodies glowing faintly under the station lights. A smile crossed his face. He had never felt so certain of a small act in his life. Quietly he entered, moving as if he were part of the shadows. He placed the bright lights into the stockings first. They flickered softly, casting tiny reflections across the room, making the walls sparkle in the dim light. Next he added the pebbles. Each one was smooth and cool, almost alive in texture. He imagined the children holding them, feeling the weight of something solid in a world that often felt like metal and air. Then came the trinkets. The janitor worked slowly, deliberately, making sure each stocking had a mix of items. He chose items for color, for texture, for the sense of curiosity they might spark. A small music box went into one, its tiny melody silent until touched, waiting to surprise. A colorful string went into another, simple but playful. Each choice was a whisper of his own humanity, a way of saying without words, "I see you. I care." As he worked, he thought of the children's faces. He imagined Lyra reaching into her stocking and squealing in delight at the little lights. He imagined Jorik puzzling over the pebbles, turning them over in his hands, wondering why something so ordinary could be so fascinating. He imagined tiny laughter echoing across the walls, soft and musical like the chime of bells. For the janitor, it was more than just giving gifts. It was an act of connection. He had lived in the station for years, unnoticed, blending into the background. But tonight he was part of something alive, something meaningful. He felt a quiet joy, different from any happiness he had known before. It was small, yes, but it felt infinite. When the last item was carefully placed into the final stocking, he stepped back. He looked at the row of tiny tubes, each one now heavy with surprise, each one a promise of wonder. The room seemed to hum softly with anticipation, as if the station itself knew something extraordinary was about to happen. He took one last look at the sleeping children. Their small hands twitched in dreams, and a soft sigh escaped their lips. In that moment he felt a deep connection, one that went beyond words or species or even understanding. It was simple, pure, and human. The janitor quietly left the room, closing the door softly behind him. In the darkened corridor he paused and whispered, "Merry Christmas." The words were carried away by the hum of machinery, unheard by anyone but himself, but that did not matter. The act had been done and that was enough. He returned to his quarters, feeling lighter than he had in years. The stockings were full, the gifts carefully chosen, and the children's world was about to be touched in a way he could not yet see. He realized that sometimes, the smallest gestures were the most powerful. A simple act of care could create wonder, and wonder could cross any boundary, even between species. Outside, the stars spun silently in endless space. Inside the station, the alien children slept, unaware of the human who had quietly stepped into their lives, leaving behind something magical. And somewhere in the quiet corridors, a janitor smiled, knowing that for a moment he had made a difference. For him, for the children, and perhaps for the universe itself, small acts of kindness had the power to shine brighter than any star. The first light of the station's artificial morning gently lit the room, casting soft reflections on the metal walls. The alien children began to stir, their glowing eyes slowly opening as they stretched and yawned. Lyra was the first to notice something different. Her eyes flickered with curiosity as she looked toward the row of stockings hanging along the wall. They're filled, she whispered, her voice soft but trembling with excitement. Jorik blinked, his silver skin pulsing faintly as he moved closer. Filled? How? His tiny hands hovered over the stockings, unsure whether to touch them immediately or simply observe. The children slowly approached, their hearts beating with anticipation. Each stocking bulged slightly, filled with objects they had never seen before. Their little hands trembled as they reached in. Lyra pulled out the tiny lights first. She held them up, turning them carefully, and a soft glow spread across the room. The children gasped in wonder. They shine. Lyra exclaimed, her small voice echoing like a bell. She held the light near her face, mesmerized by the flickering reflections it cast across the walls and ceiling. The other children leaned in, fascinated, their eyes wide and glowing. Jorik reached into his stocking and pulled out a smooth, round pebble. It felt cold and solid in his hands, unlike anything he had touched before. He turned it over slowly, feeling the weight of it, marveling at the texture. It's different, he whispered. I don't understand it, but it feels important. Lyra discovered the small music box next. She lifted it carefully and pressed a tiny button. A soft, delicate tune began to play. The sound was strange but comforting, filling the quiet room with something new and magical. The children froze, listening with rapt attention, their glowing eyes flickering with curiosity and delight. More trinkets followed, a colorful string twisted into impossible shapes, a tiny human toy that spun in circles, and little shiny objects that reflected the lights around them. Each new discovery made the children laugh, squeal, or whisper excitedly to one another. They could not understand the exact purpose of these gifts, but the joy was clear. Every object was a small mystery, a puzzle, and a treasure all at once. As the children explored, they began to speculate about the source of these gifts. Maybe the humans did it, Jorik suggested, his eyes glowing brighter. Or maybe it's the stories we heard, the gift bringer that comes when no one watches. Lyra shook her head slowly. But why would a human care about us? We are not their children, and we are so different. Her words were tinged with wonder and confusion. The children sat in a circle, examining each gift in silence for a moment. Their small hearts were full, but they could not yet understand the thought behind the gesture. Still they felt it, a warmth, a kindness, a connection that transcended language and species. Meanwhile, the human janitor watched from a quiet corner, just beyond the doorway. He stayed hidden, content to see the children's reactions without interrupting. A soft smile spread across his face. He had expected joy, yes, but the delight on their small faces exceeded anything he had imagined. Their wonder was pure, unfiltered, and it warmed something deep inside him. He saw Lyra hold the music box to her chest, turning it over and over, mesmerized by the tune. He saw Jorik study the pebble as if it were a treasure from the stars themselves. And he saw all of them together, sharing this moment of amazement and curiosity. It was quiet, simple, and yet more powerful than anything he had ever experienced in all his years aboard the station. The children began to play, inventing little games with the gifts. They tossed the tiny lights gently to one another, creating glowing arcs in the air. They hid the pebbles and then found them again, laughing at their own cleverness. The string became a magical tool for building imaginary shapes, and the music box played again and again, filling the room with melody. The janitor's heart swelled. He realized something important. It was not the gifts themselves that mattered. It was the thought, the care, the willingness to give without expecting anything in return. That, he thought, was the essence of being human, the ability to connect, to inspire wonder, to share joy even with those who are different. For the children, it was a moment of pure magic. They did not know the janitor, and they did not yet understand his motives. But they felt the impact of his kindness. Something had changed. Their small room, filled with shiny stockings and new treasures, was now alive with warmth, laughter, and curiosity. And though the janitor remained unseen, his presence was felt in every flickering light, every shiny pebble, every note of the music box. He had reached across the gap between species and culture, and in that moment he had created a bridge of connection that neither time nor distance could break. The children played long into the station's artificial morning, their glowing eyes bright with happiness and fascination. They whispered among themselves, guessing who might have left the gifts, telling each other stories about the mysterious giver. And somewhere in the quiet corridors, the human janitor smiled, knowing he had given them something more than objects. He had given them wonder, joy, and a tiny spark of belief in the kindness of the universe. The alien children continued to play, their laughter echoing softly through the metal walls of the space station. Tiny lights flickered and danced, pebbles rolled across the floor, and the music box's gentle tune wove through the room like a soft spell. Each moment was filled with wonder, a small celebration of curiosity and joy that felt larger than the station itself. Lyra paused, holding one of the tiny lights in her hand. She stared at it for a long moment, her silver skin shimmering faintly in the glow. "Do you think the human will come back?" she asked, her voice quiet, almost a whisper. Jorik shook his head slowly. "I don't know. Maybe not. But someone saw us. Someone cared enough to give us these things." His eyes flickered like molten silver as he looked at the gifts surrounding them. "That is enough." The children returned to their play, but their minds were already filled with questions and ideas. They wondered who the mysterious giver was, why they had done this, and how they could ever repay such kindness. For the first time they felt a connection to something beyond themselves, a world they had never fully known but now sensed through small acts of care. Meanwhile, the human janitor walked quietly down the corridor outside their room. He had lingered long enough to see their reactions, and now he was leaving them to explore their joy in peace. He moved slowly, savoring the warmth that the small act had brought him. The station, usually a cold and mechanical place, now felt alive, filled with laughter, light, and the possibility of hope. He paused at a corner, looking back toward the children's room. The lights from the stockings cast tiny, flickering patterns across the floor, and he could hear the faint sound of their excitement. Something in him stirred, a deep, quiet pride. He realized that being human was not about strength or intelligence or advanced technology. It was about empathy, about reaching out even when it was not expected, about finding ways to connect across differences, and about making the lives of others a little brighter, even in the smallest ways. The janitor walked down the corridors, carrying a sense of peace he had not felt in years. He thought about the station, about the humans and aliens who lived there, and about the children. Somehow he had made a bridge between worlds, not with words or science but with kindness. That was a human gift, he realized, one that could travel farther than any starship or message, and linger longer than any memory of a mechanical system. Back in the children's room, Lyra sat with Jorik and the other children, examining the gifts once more. They had begun to create games, stories, and small adventures inspired by the trinkets, their imagination running wild. Every gift was a spark, and every spark was feeding something new in their minds. The stockings were no longer just fabric tubes, they were doors to creativity, curiosity, and connection. "Do you think humans are always like this?" one small voice asked. The question hung in the air, full of wonder and uncertainty. Lyra thought for a moment, turning one of the pebbles over in her hand. "I think, maybe. Sometimes. This one human saw us, cared, and gave without asking for anything. That makes him special. That makes humans special too." Her words were simple, but they carried weight far beyond her understanding. The children continued to play long into the station's artificial day. They laughed, explored, and shared discoveries, their glowing eyes bright with curiosity and joy. The small act of kindness had created a ripple through their lives, one that would influence them for a long time. Even without understanding the full meaning of Christmas or the customs of humans, they had learned something profound, that care, thoughtfulness, and connection could cross any boundary, even the vast differences between species. The janitor returned to his quarters, quietly satisfied. He did not seek recognition or thanks. The children's joy was enough. For him, this small act of giving had reminded him of why humanity mattered, not because of technology, power, or knowledge, but because of the ability to feel, to empathize, and to act with love and care. That was something no alien technology could replicate, no machine could replace. As the station drifted silently through the stars, a quiet harmony settled over its corridors. Somewhere in the distance, a human janitor slept peacefully, and somewhere else, alien children continued to explore the magic of the gifts they had discovered. A bridge had been built between worlds, not with words or treaties, but with something far older and more powerful: kindness, empathy, and imagination. The janitor's small, quiet act had reminded everyone in its own way of what made humans remarkable. Even in the farthest reaches of space, in a place of metal and lights and silence, humans could shine brighter than any star. And the alien children, unaware of the human watching over them, would carry that wonder with them forever in their games, their stories, and their small, shimmering hearts. Somewhere between the blinking lights, the soft laughter, and the quiet hum of the station, something simple yet extraordinary had taken place. Humanity, in its quiet way, had touched a world that was not its own, and in doing so, had reminded the universe of what truly mattered. Small acts of care, curiosity, and connection could bridge any distance, cross any difference, and leave a lasting mark on hearts, no matter how alien they seemed. And in that moment, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe was smiling at a human janitor and the alien children who had learned, without words, the magic of giving, and the power of humanity.